Hi there, little berries. It's Berry, the Queen Berry here, who has missed her little berries so much. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. There's been a lot of shit gone down this last few months, and there's certain things I can't tell you because they're to do with other people's private lives, which I can't talk about for good reason. This particular vlog is going to be centered around MEN1. I'm going to break them down and do little different vlogs for different things that have been going on. Yeah, I should have a plethora of vlogging and even another true crime, which is going to come out very soon. Let's just get into MEN1 stuff first. One thing I will warn you about is at some point in this video, I will be talking about periods. Now, it is going to get a bit much. It is going to get a bit TMI, but there's a good reason for it because it really illustrates the sort of things that women go through when they have issues with their periods. So I'll start by talking about something non-period related first. Back in October, I had my normal consultation. I had routine blood tests, and of course, as per my previous vlog, the test came up that I had anemia. The red blood cell count was low. They also look at the size of the red blood cells as well, and the level of hemoglobin and all that. They described it as significant anemia. So I went to my doctors, and I actually had a blood test which determined I had low iron and low folic acid. I was put on iron and folic acid, which I've been on for several months. A few weeks ago, I had my blood retested, and it turned out that my iron levels had returned to normal, but whether or not I'm actually over the anemia, I don't yet know. Because just because your iron levels are normal doesn't mean that your hemoglobin and red blood cell count and size are back to normal. I don't know what that's like yet, but I need to keep taking the iron. I also don't know if my vitamin D levels are back up to normal either. So yeah, I probably have to have those retested at some point. Back in January, I finally had an appointment to see the endocrinologist consultant at St Thomas's Hospital to discuss a parathyroidectomy. We had booked it for the 14th of April this year, but of course we all know what's happened since, unless you've been living under a rock. And I can't say it because apparently the algorithm doesn't like it for some reason. I phoned up the hospital and said, because of what's happened, will my surgery be postponed? And they said yes, unfortunately. But I mean, yeah, fine, it's a bit disappointing for me because I have two calcified kidney stones caused by my hyperparathyroidism. I also get some headaches and some brain fog. It upsets my menstrual cycle, which is part of it. But at the same time, it's not urgent. There's doctors and nurses coming out of retirement. There are specialists being trained in intensive care to be able to cope with this. So of course, I'm more than happy to have my appointment cancelled if it saves people's lives. I don't know when I'm going to be having the parathyroidectomy, but I tell you something, I was looking forward to it. And I'm still looking forward to it. Moving on to the thing about periods is that not just the parathyroids. I mean, 90% of people with MEN1 have parathyroid issues, and about 75 will have pancreatic issues, which of course you know I have. I've been on lanreotide for 8 months now. I'm now self-injecting, which is a piece of cake. And yeah, it's not a small needle, by the way. It's about 1 inch long, and it's about 2 millimeters thick, or 1.5 millimeters thick, that I have to into my own thigh. And I've been trained to do it. Last time I did it was quite painful because I forgot to stretch the skin. But it's still, you know, it did its purpose and everything, so I'll make sure I don't make that mistake again this time. The other gland that is more commonly affected by MEN1 is the pituitary gland, and now that sits just behind the nose at the base of the brain. And lots of people have pituitary tumours, adenomas, whatever you want to call them, and they may not always cause issues. Sometimes they can cause headaches, blurred vision, but the point is that the pituitary gland is kind of like the king of the glands. You know, it affects so many different hormones in the body that if there's something wrong with the pituitary gland, your whole body's going to be affected in some way, shape or form. I have a tiny adenoma, so they call it a microadenoma. They're not worried about it, and they'll only have a look at it again in a few years. But the thing is, I think that is the reason why I have and I mean extremely heavy periods, to the point that I can't even wear Super Plus tampons for an hour. If I were to change my tampon, I'd have to put a towel on as well, because in between, even if it's a lightning quick change, I'd lose some blood. I have to wear nighttime towels during the first 3 days of my period, and sometimes I have to change them every hour. That's how heavy they can get. And I've said this to the endocrinologist, I've said this to my GP. So they thought that was probably the reason why I was anemic as well. So I was sent for a scan. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on my last vlog. I went for a transabdominal scan, and you have to have a full bladder for it, which was not nice. And I did it during my lunch hour. It was very, very quick. There's a small local hospital where I could have it done. And they put the scanner on me, and I told the radiographer what the position was. She said she was expecting to see my womb full of fibroids and cysts on my ovaries. Turns out my womb is clear, my ovaries are clear. The only explanation for why my periods are so heavy is the pituitary gland. Now, I had the worst experience with my periods recently, and this is where it's going to really get TMI. So if you don't want to hear about it, you can switch off now. Some weeks ago, I went to the pharmacist during my lunch break. The wife went off to get a few bits for herself, and she was going to go to, I think, Subway and get a sandwich. I was waiting at the counter. I got my prescription. I think it was for vitamin D. And as I was walking away, and I was, at the time I was wearing black jeans, thankfully, and I was wearing a coat that came down just below my hips. And I had a nighttime towel on, and I had just changed it before going out. And ladies, if you know what I'm talking about, when you can feel something coming out. I could feel it was like a ball, a lump come out, and it sat there, and then slowly it soaked through the towel, round the side of my underwear and onto my jeans, and it went up as well to the front of my underwear. And I had to walk slowly, because if I walked fast, more and more would release. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to get back to work. I've got to change. But oh my God, my jeans are all wet. And this was horrible. This was absolutely horrible. And then as I was getting closer back to work, another one came out. It wasn't as bad, but it still was a lot. And I panicked, and I phoned the other half on mobile, and I said, where are you? I need you to do something for me. I need you to get me to go into Asda or whatever, and just get me a new pair of jeans, some more underwear. I already had towels, and some wipes, because this has happened. And I was almost in tears. I was panicking, and I felt so bad, because I normally wouldn't ask somebody to do something like that for me. It's not their problem, and I could have gone and done it myself, but I had to get back and get onto the toilet. My other half had gone out and got herself a Subway. She had a lot of things with her, but I explained, look, I'm really sorry about this, but it's really bad. So she did. She went out and bought a new pair of jeans for me, some underwear and wipes, and I was in the basement loo at work, so there was nobody else in there, and I showed her, look, this is how bad it was, to the point that I had to throw my jeans away. They were flooded, and it was the most awful experience I'd ever had with periods. I'd had them leak before. I'd had them leak a fair bit before, but this was a big flood. It was awful. I used a whole pack of wipes to clean myself up, and I threw away my jeans, I threw away my underwear, and I had to, I got the new ones on. Luckily the jeans fit beautifully, and they were really comfortable as well, even though sometimes new jeans are very stiff, aren't they? But these were actually quite comfortable, and I was really upset by the whole experience. I did talk to my doctor about possibly going on the mini pill, and she suggested the coil, but I've heard some real horror stories about the coil, like getting stuck or falling out or getting infected and all that, and it's painful to put in, and she said, no, I don't really want to put you on the mini pill because you're not having sex, so because I'm gay, so I don't need it in that sense. Instead, I was prescribed something called mefenamic acid, where you take it 3 times a day for the first 5 days of a period, and it's supposed to stem the flow. And there's one thing that my doctor said to me, which I didn't know about, was that if you women out there, if you ever notice clotting with your periods, which I get a lot of clots, what's actually happening is your body's trying to stop itself from bleeding. It's trying to say, oh, no more. But you end up bleeding out anyway. And I think a lot of women who have heavy periods really should be checked for anemia, because the blood has to come from somewhere. It doesn't come from your veins. It's not like you're losing the blood from your veins, but at the same time the body uses its nutrients and uses its resources to create that blood, and then get rid of that blood, and then have to create some more. So this is what can cause problems sometimes. And I found my periods haven't been too bad ever since. They've been heavy still. I still have to wear big towels, but I haven't been changing as frequently, and as long as I use the acid, I happen to be fine. But my actual periods are irregular, and they go on for long periods of time, then short periods of time. Then I go a month or two without one, and then it's all over the shop at the moment. But I have told my doctors this and everything. So this is what can happen with MEN1, because it affects the hormones in the body. It can therefore affect pretty much anything. For example, the parathyroids. So end of period TMI, by the way. With the parathyroids, it leaches the calcium from the bones, and I have a slight osteopenia in my left forearm here, and I did actually find I was getting a bit of pain from my pinky finger to my elbow a few years ago, and I thought it was like carpal tunnel or repetitive strain injury. And I found I couldn't type very well on it, but my wrist was starting to hurt as well. That's lessened quite a lot since I've been taking vitamin D, but at the same time, it's going to really help when I get the parathyroids out, and it will mitigate any potential renal issues I'm probably experiencing with this hyperparathyroidism. This will be my first ever surgery, ever. Oh, the only thing I have had done is I did have a skin tag removed from my left breast. I did touch on this a few years ago when I did another update, and I didn't want to reveal where it was, but I'm happy to reveal where it was now. You may as well know. It was on my left nipple, and it looked like a little wart, but it was a very soft little pliable wart on my left nipple, and it was there for quite some time, and I didn't think it was to do with any MEN1. I do now know that it is, because skin tagging and skin cysts and skin issues are to do with it. And I had that removed, and I had to have it done by an actual breast surgeon because of where delicate it was. But it was done so well that there isn't even a scar there. You can't even tell that it's been done. It was so neat. Other than that, I haven't had any other surgery. I've never had a tooth out. I've never had a filling. I would say, though, having an anaesthetic injection into your nipple is fucking painful. And when afterwards, because it goes numb really quick, the anaesthetist said to me, "You're right there." I went, "Oh, thank you." And the nurses laughed, and they said, "That's not what we would have said to him." But yeah, I can look back and laugh now. But at the time, it wasn't very good. But I was relieved when it was done, relieved when it was over, and I was so impressed as well, because I didn't experience any pain at all afterwards. They said to me that it would get painful, but it wasn't. So you've now learned a lot about Airy Berry that you didn't know before. You're welcome. So thank you for tuning in. I'm going to do some more of these vlogs. Thank you for tuning in again. I'm going to be doing more of these vlogs very soon, so stay tuned, little berries. Bye bye.